I turned 48 today. Not that anyone remembered. The morning was quiet. Just me and Felix, my old tabby cat, who purred contentedly on the windowsill as I sipped my coffee. No calls, no messages, nothing unusual. It has been like this for the past 28 years. I'd long since stopped expecting anything from my family. Then, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped for a second, foolishly hopeful. But when I opened the door, there was no surprise visitor, no birthday flowers, just a thick envelope with elegant gold lettering lying on my doorstep. I didn't even have to open it to know what it was. Another anniversary, another grand celebration for my parents' perfect marriage. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out the invitation. The usual cream-colored cardstock, the same formal wording. You are cordially invited to celebrate the 50th wedding anniversary of Madeleine and Jacques Rousseau. A golden crest at the top, as if they were European royalty. And then, the part that made my stomach twist. As always, we would be honored if our beloved Isabella would deliver the anniversary toast. I let out a short laugh, dry and humorless. Of course, they had forgotten my birthday, again, but expected me to stand before 100 guests and wax poetic about their lifelong love. Before I could spiral any further, the front door burst open. "Oh my God, Mom!" Amelie, my daughter, rushed in, her long dark hair flying behind her as she dropped her bag. She looked stricken, guilt already written across her face. I just realized I completely forgot. I had my last exam and She stopped, eyes locking on to the invitation in my hand. Her expression darkened. "They sent it today?" I forced a smile, trying to make light of it. Well, at least someone remembered a special occasion. Amelie wasn't amused. She grabbed the invitation, reading it over. "And they want you to give a speech? Again? After they forgot your birthday? For what? The 28th year in a row?" 28th, I agreed, taking another sip of my now lukewarm coffee. "But who's counting?" Amelie let out a frustrated huff and threw the invitation onto the counter. "This is ridiculous. You do this every year. You stand there, saying lovely things about them, and they can't even be bothered to say happy birthday? Are you really going to let this slide again?" I didn't answer, because honestly, I didn't know. Then my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Maman. Amelie crossed her arms. "Let me guess. She wants to talk about the anniversary." I let it ring. A minute later, another call. Marcel. My older brother. The golden boy of the family. The one who never had to beg for attention. Then another. Louis. And then a text from my sister, Camille. "Maman is upset. Don't be difficult, call her back." Amélie snatched the phone from my hands. "This is unbelievable. They don't remember your birthday, but the second you don't pick up about their big event, it's an emergency?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. "It's how they are." "But why do you put up with it?" She stared at me, waiting, but I had no good answer. The phone buzzed again, this time from Marcel's wife, Veronique. "Your mother is getting anxious. Please call her back." You know how she gets about these things. I did know. She got exactly what she wanted, every single time. Amelie grabbed my hands, squeezing them tight. "Mom, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go. You don't have to give that speech. You don't owe them anything." Something inside me shifted. A thought. So simple and obvious, yet somehow completely revolutionary. Maybe I don't have to do this. I looked at my daughter, my fierce, loyal Amélie, who saw me in a way my own parents never had. "You're right," I said slowly, feeling the weight of the realization settle over me, Amelie's eyes widened. Wait, really? Really? A slow grin spread across her face. Then let's go celebrate with you for once. I hesitated. Years of conditioning made it hard to say yes to something so simple, so self-serving. But then I glanced at my phone, at the dozens of missed calls and texts, all about them. Never about me. Screw it. All right, I said, standing up. Let's go. Amelie whooped, grabbing my coat. Now this is the best birthday gift ever. As we stepped out the door, my phone buzzed one last time. I didn't even look. For once, they could wait. Literally. I walked into my home office to find a large, leather-bound photo album sitting on my desk. It hadn't been there last night, which meant Maman. She must have come by while I was out, slipping in like a ghost, leaving this as some sort of peace offering. I flipped it open. Photo after photo of my parents' lavish anniversaries over the years. Their 10th, 25th, 40th, each one meticulously documented. Maman in designer gowns, Papa in his tailored suits, all smiles, all elegance. And then I reached their 35th. There I was, technically, barely visible in the background, helping a waiter clean up a spilled drink. My breath caught. I turned the page. Their 40th. I had pneumonia that year. They had insisted I still give the speech. I nearly collapsed afterward, but of course there was no sign of that in the photos. Just their perfect, polished love story. My phone rang. Maman again. I answered, my voice steady. Good morning, Maman. Isabella, she said, her tone clipped. Why weren't you at the meeting last night? I was celebrating my birthday. A pause, then a sharp intake of breath. Oh, was that yesterday? Yes, I said, flipping another page in the album. Another pause. Then, in a brisk, dismissive tone, well, you know how busy things get this time of year. I closed the album. Yes, Maman. I do. She cleared her throat. Now, about the anniversary, I found the photo album you left. Ah, wonderful. Her voice brightened. I thought it might inspire your speech. You always do such a lovely job capturing the essence of our family's legacy. I traced a finger over a photo of Camille and Marcel standing beside our parents, laughing, glasses raised. Legacy? Interesting choice of words. Maman, I said softly, do you know what's missing from all these pictures? She made a dismissive sound. Oh, I'm sure you're in there somewhere, dear. I let out a quiet laugh, one that held no humor. Yes, somewhere. The doorbell rang. Someone's at the door, Maman. I have to go. But we haven't discussed. I hung up. At the door, Veronique stood, looking uncomfortable. Your mother sent me, she admitted, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She's worried you're going to make things difficult. I looked at the photo album in my hands, then back at her. Define difficult. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I wanted to give them the usual speech. Maybe it was time for a different kind of story. Veronique sat stiffly on my couch, adjusting her scarf as if it were suffocating her. She had always been the diplomatic one, the peacemaker of the family, the one sent to smooth things over when Maman deemed me unreasonable. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. So, what exactly did Maman tell you to say? She hesitated. She's just concerned. She thinks you might be overreacting. I let out a sharp laugh. Overreacting? To what? To have my birthday ignored for the 28th year in a row? Or to be summoned like an employee to plan an event that has nothing to do with me? Veronique shifted uncomfortably. Isabella, you know how she is. She doesn't mean to forget. She chooses to forget. I cut her off, my voice colder than I intended. Silence. Veronique looked down at her hands, neatly folded in her lap. Look, I get it. I do. But this anniversary is a big deal. Everyone will be there. The governor's wife, the mayor, all of their friends from the club. If you don't show up, people will talk. Let them. Her head snapped up. You don't mean that. I do. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Isabella, this is not the time for rebellion. Your mother, my mother sent me a photo album full of celebrations I wasn't part of. And when I pointed it out, she dismissed me again. She's old-fashioned. She's selfish. Veronique looked at me for a long moment, something flickering behind her eyes. Then she stood up, smoothing her coat. I tried? Yes, you did. She hesitated before heading toward the door. Are you really not coming? I exhaled slowly. No, I'm not. Veronique nodded, as if she had expected that answer. Then at least call her. Don't just disappear. I didn't respond, because that was exactly what I intended to do. No calls, no texts. Even Amélie noticed. They've gone silent, she remarked over coffee one morning. They're waiting for me to cave, she smirked. That's not happening, right? Absolutely not. For the first time in years, I felt free. I focused on my writing. I went for long walks. I even started organizing my bookshelf, something I'd been meaning to do for months. And then an email arrived. I sighed, already knowing who it was from. Marcel, Isabella, we need to talk. Maman is expecting you at the family dinner tomorrow. You know how important this is to her. Can you stop being difficult for once? I closed my laptop without replying. By the next morning, the calls resumed. First Louis, then Camille, then finally Maman. I let them all go to voicemail. By the time the evening rolled around, I had 23 missed calls. And then the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised to see Marcel standing there. Unlike Veronique, he didn't bother with pleasantries. We need to talk. I stepped aside, letting him in. Marcel didn't sit. He paced my living room, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Maman is furious. What else is new? He shot me a look. Do you want to be cut out of this family? I folded my arms. Interesting question. Considering this family barely remembers I exist unless they need something. His jaw tightened. Isabella, don't do this. Don't make things harder than they need to be. I tilted my head. Harder for whom? Because I'm feeling quite at peace, actually. He let out a frustrated sigh. You're really not coming. No, Marcel. I'm really not. He exhaled sharply, muttering something under his breath. Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't expect any of us to fix this later. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Perfect. As he left, I knew. This time, I wasn't backing down. The night after Marcel's visit, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Felix curled against my side. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the wooden floors and the rustling of tree branches outside my window. I should have felt victorious. I had stood my ground. I had refused to be dragged into their world again. But something gnawed at me. Not regret, not doubt, just a strange, hollow awareness of the inevitable fallout. And then, as if the universe had been waiting for me to acknowledge it, my phone rang. Maman. I let it ring. It rang again, and again. By the fourth time, Felix lifted his head and gave me a look that clearly said, just answer so we can both sleep. With a sigh, I picked up. Bonsoir, maman. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. Enfin. I was beginning to think you had blocked me. Tempting. I've been busy, she scoffed. Too busy to acknowledge your family? I sat up, running a hand through my hair. That's an interesting accusation coming from you. A pause, then a clipped controlled tone. "Isabella, we need to be practical about this. The anniversary is in 5 days. You will attend. You will give the speech. You will behave like an adult." I let out a slow breath. "No, Mama, I won't." Silence. Then, with chilling precision, she asked, "Are you trying to humiliate me?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "This tantrum of yours," she continued, her voice tightening. "What exactly do you want? Attention? Apologies? Money?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "Money?" She ignored me. "I have tolerated your dramatics for years, Isabella, but this is unacceptable. You are part of this family, whether you like it or not. And you will—" "No, Mama." My voice was steady. "I won't." Silence. For the first time, I thought she might actually hang up. But then she let out a slow breath. "Fine," she said, her tone laced with something dangerously close to amusement. "Do as you wish, but don't expect to be welcomed back after this." I closed my eyes, absorbing the finality in her words. I never really felt welcomed in the first place, and with that, I hung up. The days leading up to the anniversary were eerily quiet. No more phone calls, no more texts, no more surprise visits from Veronique or Marcel. It was as if they had all collectively decided to erase me. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt something close to anticipation. Because I knew my absence wouldn't go unnoticed. They weren't ignoring me out of indifference. They were waiting, watching, hoping I would break first. But I didn't. Instead, I finalized the last chapter of my memoir. The day before the anniversary, my publisher called. Sarah's voice practically crackled through the phone with excitement. "Isabella, are you sitting down?" I glanced at Felix, lazily stretched out across my desk. "I am now. The early reviews are phenomenal. Critics are calling it raw and unflinching. The Parisian Review just called it a searing indictment of privilege and emotional neglect." A slow smile spread across my face. That's quite the compliment. "Oh, and guess what? We're pushing up the release date by 2 days. I straightened. 2 days? Yes. Meaning? Your book will drop on the morning of your parents' anniversary party. I blinked. Then a laugh bubbled up. "Sarah, that's perfect," she supplied. "Poetic," I corrected, grinning. I heard the smirk in her voice. "Are you ready for the fallout?" I glanced at the thick, leather-bound copy of my manuscript sitting on my desk. I think I finally am. The morning of the anniversary arrived with a storm of missed calls. Maman, Marcel, Louis, even Camille, who usually stayed out of family conflicts, had texted, "For God's sake, Isabella, what have you done?" I sat in my study scrolling through the chaos unfolding on my phone screen while Amélie monitored social media from the couch. "Your Good Morning France interview just hit 1 million views," she announced, not bothering to hide her glee. "And the art of invisibility is trending." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Then another text came in. Marcel. "The caterers are threatening to cancel. Mother is having a meltdown." "Where are you?" Amélie snorted. "Oh no, not the caterers. However will they recover?" I chuckled, but before I could respond, the doorbell rang. We both knew who it would be. "I'll get it," Amélie offered, but I stopped her. "No," I said, standing up. "Let me." Marcel looked like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and there was a tightness in his jaw that hadn't been there before. "You have to come with me," he said, bypassing all pleasantries. "Hello to you, too." He wasn't in the mood. "Isabella, this isn't funny." I leaned against the door frame. "I disagree." He exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. Do you have any idea what it's like in that house right now? The governor's wife just canceled. The press is circling like vultures. Father has locked himself in his study and Maman—" He paused, rubbing his temples. "She's crying." I raised a brow. "Maman is crying?" He nodded, looking utterly exhausted. "I have never seen her cry." That gave me pause. Not because I felt guilty. God, no. But because, for the first time, I had truly shaken the unshakable. Marcel ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I don't care about the book. I don't care about the press, but please come fix this." I studied him for a long moment. Then, I held up the wrapped package in my hands. "My anniversary gift," I said, passing it to him. He frowned, taking it cautiously. "What is it?" "Open it and see." He hesitated, then unwrapped the package. The moment his eyes landed on the gold-lettered cover, his face went pale. "You didn't." I smiled. "I did." Marcel swallowed, gripping the book like it might explode in his hands. "Maman will never forgive you for this." "Maybe not." I met his gaze evenly. "But for the first time, I think I can finally forgive myself." He stared at me for a moment, something unreadable passing over his expression. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. As I watched him go, I let out a slow breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Amélie appeared beside me, arms crossed. "So, are we still crashing the party?" I glanced at the clock, then at my phone, which buzzed again with yet another frantic message from Camille. I smiled. "Oh, absolutely." Amélie and I arrived outside my parents' grand estate just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sprawling gardens and ivy-covered walls. The driveway was packed with luxury cars, and through the grand windows I could see elegantly dressed guests milling about, sipping champagne, utterly unaware that they were about to witness the collapse of a carefully curated illusion. Amélie nudged me. "Are you ready for this?" I exhaled slowly, adjusting my coat. "Not even slightly," she grinned. "Good. That makes two of us." We slipped in through the side entrance, the same one I used as a teenager when I wanted to disappear unnoticed. The house was filled with familiar faces, all pretending everything was normal, though the tension in the air was palpable. Conversations were hushed. Eyes darted toward the main staircase, where Maman would undoubtedly make her grand entrance soon. And then I spotted it. A black leather-bound book, sitting atop the gift table like a quiet, ticking bomb. Marcel had placed it there. I smiled to myself. Good. Isabella. I turned to see Camille, standing stiffly in the hallway, arms crossed. She looked flawless, as always, sleek black dress, not a single golden strand of hair out of place. But there was something tight in her expression, something almost wary. "I need to speak with you." I arched my brow. "Let me guess. Damage control?" She sighed. "You could have at least warned us." "I did," I said simply. "You just didn't listen." Camille's gaze flickered to Amélie, who stood beside me, arms folded in quiet defiance. "And you brought her into this?" Amélie scoffed. "Oh, please. I'm 22, not 5. And unlike the rest of you, I actually see my mother." Camille's jaw tightened. "Isabella, this isn't just about you. This is about our family's reputation." "Ah." I held up a finger. "There it is." "What?" "The word you've all been dancing around. Reputation." Camille sighed through her nose. "Fine, yes. You've humiliated us." "Told the truth," I corrected. "Do you really think publishing our family's worst moments for the world to see is justified?" I tilted my head. "Would you have listened any other way?" Silence. Then, before Camille could reply, The murmur of voices suddenly hushed. I turned toward the dining hall where Maman had just stepped onto the small podium at the front of the room, a crystal champagne flute in hand. Right on cue. For 50 years, Maman began, her voice smooth as ever. Jacques and I have built a life filled with love, resilience, and family. Tonight we celebrate not only our journey together, but the bonds that make us who we are. I weaved through the crowd, slipping toward the front. The guests parted slightly as they noticed me, whispers rippling through the room. Maman's eyes landed on me mid-sentence. She faltered, only for a second. Then, she recovered. And of course, we must thank all of you for being here to share this moment with us. I stopped just a few feet from the podium, arms crossed, watching her. She held my gaze, then continued, her voice tighter than before. As tradition dictates, we would normally invite Isabella to give a toast, as she has so eloquently done for many years. A pause, a flicker of unease in her carefully controlled expression. But unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, she will not be speaking tonight. A murmur of confusion swept through the guests. I cleared my throat, loudly. Maman stiffened. The room went still, and then I stepped forward. Actually, Maman, I said, voice carrying easily through the silence. I think I'll say a few words after all. She opened her mouth, undoubtedly to protest, but I had already taken a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and turned to face the room. Bonsoir, everyone. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me, some curious, some apprehensive, others downright scandalized. Good. I raised my glass. For years I have stood here and spoken of love, of family, of unity. I have woven words together like ribbons, painting the portrait of a life that, on the surface, seemed beautiful. I glanced toward the gift table where my book sat like an unspoken challenge. But tonight, I continued, I would rather raise a glass to something else, something that, until now, has never been truly acknowledged. I turned, locking eyes with Maman. The art of invisibility. A hush fell over the crowd. I let the words sink in. For years, I've watched this family celebrate everything, every achievement, every milestone, every grand occasion. I smiled, a sharp, knowing thing. Everything, except me. Maman's grip on her champagne flute tightened. Papa sat frozen beside her, lips pressed into a thin line. Marcel looked down. Camille inhaled sharply. Louis rubbed his temple. And me? I felt free. I let my gaze sweep over the room. Some of you might think I'm being dramatic, that this is unnecessary, that I should have continued playing my part, smiling on cue, offering words of praise for a family that never quite knew how to love me in return. I took a sip of champagne, savoring the burn of it. But the thing about being invisible, I said softly, is that eventually you either fade away completely or you step into the light. I set down my glass. Then, with deliberate movements, I walked toward the gift table. The crowd parted for me. I picked up the book, the very same one they had all tried to ignore. Then I turned back to my mother. Happy anniversary, Maman. I extended the book to her. She hesitated. Then, with shaking hands, she took it. Silence stretched between us, and then a camera clicking. Someone had taken a photo. Maman flinched, her eyes darting toward the source of the sound. Then another click, and another. A storm of whispers erupted. The perfect family illusion had cracked publicly, irrevocably. Maman clutched the book, knuckles white. I hope, I said quietly, that this time you actually read what I wrote. I turned on my heel. The room was suffocating with tension. Amélie caught up with me as I reached the exit. That was legendary. I let out a shaky breath. It was something, and with that, we walked out into the night. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages, some from journalists, some from distant relatives. But the one that stood out was from Marcel. She's been reading it all night. She hasn't spoken to anyone. I stared at the message, heart hammering. Then, another text. This time, from Maman. Are you free for tea this afternoon? I swallowed. Then, without overthinking it, I typed back. PMA beat of hesitation. Then, perfect. I'm bringing scones. I set my phone down, exhaling. Amélie peeked into my study. Well, I smiled, running my fingers over the leather-bound copy of my book. She sees me now, and for the first time in my life, I believed it. At precisely 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. I had been expecting it, yet I hesitated before answering. Maman had not set foot in my house for over a decade. The last time she was here, she had spent most of the visit rearranging my living room furniture without asking, commenting on how minimalist, read disappointing, my life was compared to Camille's perfectly curated Parisian apartment. I took a steadying breath, smoothing my sweater before opening the door. There she stood, pristine as ever, dressed in a deep navy coat, her silk scarf knotted elegantly at her throat. A leather handbag dangled from her wrist, and in her hands she carried a small cloth-covered basket. "Scones," she said, lifting the basket slightly as if I might not believe her. I stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated, just a fraction of a second, before stepping over the threshold. The air between us was taut, like the moments before a summer storm. She moved with the same measured grace she always had, taking in my home, my bookshelves, the photos on my walls. When her eyes landed on the framed picture of Amélie and me at a cafe in Montmartre, she smiled, just barely, but said nothing. I led her to the kitchen, where I had already set the table with tea and a plate of biscuits. Maman sat down, setting her handbag carefully on the chair beside her, as if she might need to make a quick escape. For a long moment, we simply poured our tea in silence. Finally, she spoke. "I finished your book." I set down my cup. "And?" Maman inhaled deeply, as if preparing herself for something painful. It was not what I expected. A vague, diplomatic response. Classic. I said nothing, waiting. She picked up her cup, but didn't drink. "You always had a way with words, Isabella." Words were all I had. Her fingers tightened slightly around the porcelain. "You think I never saw you?" I didn't answer. She looked up then, meeting my gaze. "But I did." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "If you saw me, Maman, you had a very strange way of showing it." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or something close to it. She reached into her handbag, pulling out an old, leather-bound notebook. Without a word, she slid it across the table. I hesitated before picking it up. The pages were yellowed at the edges, the handwriting inside unmistakably hers. I flipped through, frowning. Birthdays, achievements, little details about my life, my first words, my first short story, written when I was 7. The day I won my first writing competition in school. Page after page of things I had assumed she never noticed. I swallowed hard. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you keep all of this but never tell me?" Maman folded her hands in her lap, looking smaller somehow. "Because I didn't know how to." I blinked. "That's not an answer." She let out a long breath, staring at her tea. "I was raised to believe that love was not something you spoke about. It was something you proved. Through actions, through structure, through ensuring your children had everything they needed." She looked at me then, something raw in her expression. "I thought I was giving you everything. Isabella. I swallowed, my throat tight. Everything except warmth. I said quietly. She looked away. Yes. For the first time, I saw not the cold, untouchable matriarch, but a woman who had never learned how to mother in a way that I needed. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, I exhaled, rubbing my temples. Maman. I didn't write the book to destroy you. She nodded slowly. I know. I wrote it because I needed you to see me. She took another sip of tea, then set her cup down with careful precision. I see you now. And somehow I knew she meant it. The weeks after that tea changed everything, not in a dramatic, sweeping way. There were no tearful reunions, no grand apologies, no sudden shifts in personality. But there was something different. Maman began calling, not just for obligation, but because she wanted to. Marcel sent a message saying he had started therapy, an admission that would have been unthinkable months ago. Camille, ever the perfectionist, wrote a column in one of her lifestyle magazines about redefining family narratives. It was vague, but I knew it was her way of acknowledging my book without outright saying it. Even Papa, who had remained largely silent throughout everything, sent a brief but telling text. I read it. I'm sorry. I never expected a miracle. But somehow, against all odds, we had found our way to something real, something honest. The night before my book tour, Maman called. I have a gift for you, she said, her voice softer than usual. I frowned. What kind of gift? A new tradition, she said cryptically. Come over. So I did. When I arrived, she led me into the study, the very room where so many of our family stories had been shaped. On the desk sat a brand new leather-bound notebook identical to the one she had given me weeks before. I picked it up, flipping through the blank pages. I don't understand. Maman folded her hands. You said I never saw you. That I never remembered. I want to start changing that. From now on, we will fill this together. I stared at her. She shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure if this gesture would be received well. Slowly, I smiled. All right. She exhaled, relieved. Good. For the first time, I leaned in and kissed her cheek. She stiffened for just a moment. Then, ever so slightly, she leaned into it. Progress. A month later, I sat on a panel in a crowded bookstore in London. The moderator turned to me, smiling. Isabella, the art of invisibility has resonated with so many people. What do you think made it so powerful? I thought of Amélie, who had reminded me that I deserved to be seen. I thought of the photo album my mother had left on my desk, a misguided attempt to tell me she had noticed me, just in the wrong ways. I thought of the notebook we had started filling together, one small story at a time. And then I smiled. Because, I said simply, at some point, we all just want to be seen. The audience applauded, flashes from cameras illuminating the stage. I had spent years believing that invisibility was my fate. But now, I knew the truth. I had never been invisible. I had just been waiting for the right moment to shine. Story 2. To prevent me from using my life savings to purchase a home, my aunt froze my bank account. She insisted that family comes first, but I had a startling secret. Agreement. The realtor's text message was like a ray of optimism shining on my phone screen. Everything is prepared for tomorrow's closure. I just need confirmation of your down payment. I grinned as I ran my fingers across my aunt's immaculate kitchen's marble countertop. My dream of owning a craftsman-style home had finally come true after years of saving every dime. My name is Malia, and I was about to learn the hard way that family and money are a terrible mix. Sweetheart, more wine. I was startled out of my reverie by Aunt Sharon's voice. She stood poised with a crystal decanter in her designer dress. The matriarch of the family since the passing of my mother, tonight was the special supper she had insisted on hosting. Thank you, but no. I should maintain my composure for the closing tomorrow. Her eyebrows arched, nicely plucked. Oh. What closing? I'm purchasing a house, I exclaimed, unable to conceal my excitement. Remember the artisan I showed you images of? The one with the wraparound porch. She laid down the decanter with a crisp clink. Darling, we need to talk about something vital first. My gut nodded as her tone changed. What's the matter? There's been a family emergency. She brought out her iPad, manicured fingertips touching the screen. Your cousin, George's medical expenditures have entirely emptied the family treasury. We need everyone to pitch in. Which family fund? The one your mother helped establish before she went. You must recall signing the documents the previous year. The iPad was moved across the table by her. You consented to hold the account jointly. I gazed at the banking app until my hands grew chilly. The sum in my savings account, which I had been accumulating for years, was zero. What did you do? My voice was hardly audible. What did family need? Practice softened Sharon's face. I feel sorry. Georgia need urgent surgery. Family is the top priority. Malia, your mom would have preferred it. Don't! I sprang up so rapidly, my chair tumbled backward. Don't you dare use Mom to explain this! Sit down, she said, her mask falling. You're exaggerating. Is it dramatic? You took the down payment for my house. I did no such thing. When you signed the joint account agreement, you gave your consent to the transfer. What agreement? I never then. I remembered the stack of papers she'd had me sign during Christmas dinner. They were updated, she had claimed. Papers for the beneficiaries of Mom's previous life insurance policy. I was duped by you. The insight struck like a punch to the body. Sharon's mouth went thin. You didn't make a snap decision because of me. You're not prepared to become a homeowner. The family was more in need of those funds than you were of some pointless home. I shook my fingers and took out my phone. I'm going to call the cops. Proceed. Her smile grew razor keen. All of the documents are signed by you. Completely legal. It's not always legal, is it? Correct, she chuckled. Is placing your family's needs ahead of your mother's desires and safeguarding their interests the same thing? You're still very innocent and young. I got in her face by leaning across the table. What you've done would disgust Mom. Her cheeks lost their color. Leave my house. Thank you. I picked up my handbag and made my way to the door. However, this is not the end of it. Malia, don't be stupid. I am too strong for you to defeat. I looked back into her eyes. Observe me. My car's door banged behind me with gratifying power. I eventually let the tears flow. Savings of years vanished in a flash. My ideal home is vanishing. But something more difficult was emerging behind the sadness. Determination. It buzzed on my phone. Once more, the realtor. Need that confirmation by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Is everything all right? I texted back with shaky fingers. I must postpone. Emergency in the family. I then navigate to a number I haven't phoned in years by opening my contacts. My best buddy from boyhood, Nick, went on to work as a financial investigator. The third ring caught his attention. Malia. It has been ages. I need your assistance, Nick. I inhaled deeply. After Mom passed away, did you recall all the strange things we saw about Aunt Sharon? I believe I have only discovered the beginning. I'm paying attention. Excellent. Because I'm going to destroy my aunt's idyllic little world. As I drove home that night, Sharon's remarks rang in my thoughts. Family comes first. One thing she was correct about. Family was involved, but not in the way she had assumed. This was about truth, justice, and ensuring that she never did to anyone what she had done to me. I was going to win, and the game was on. Dust and forgotten memories filled the attic of my mother's former home. All of the cardboard boxes that towered over me held the secret to revealing Aunt Sharon's deceit. After hours of work, my phone buzzed. Any luck? Via the speaker, Nick's voice crackled. Not yet. I moved another box, causing a dust cloud to rise. However, Sharon's account of Georgia's medical expenses is inconsistent. Georgia herself just hung up the phone with me. She hasn't undergone any surgery. Fascinating. What else? The copy is missing from Mom's will. Following the funeral, Sharon appeared, entrusted the family with everything. But I distinctly remember Mom telling me she'd set up individual inheritances for the attic. Floorboard creaked behind me. My cousin Heidi was standing at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide, when I turned around. I'll call you back, I muttered to Nick and hung up. What are you doing up here? Heidi asked, stepping closer. I could pose the same question to you. This is still my mother's residence. Heidi's face softened. Sharon sent me to check on you. She's concerned that you might act hastily. Worried I might find anything you mean? I took out one of these dusty folders. Transfers to offshore accounts are displayed on bank statements, beginning the day following Mom's passing. Heidi had a worried habit of fidgeting with her jewelry since she was a little girl. Malia, please be careful. Sharon has connections. Is that a threat? A cautionary tale? She took a quick look behind her. I should not be telling you this, but odd things began to happen last year when I questioned some inconsistencies in my trust fund. My job applications were mysteriously rejected. My rental application was denied. I set down the folder. Sharon did that to you? Heidi gave a nod. Hazel is in charge of all the financial cover-ups, and she has the family lawyer Fletcher in her pocket. Mom's former business partner, Hazel. The same. They've been working together for years. Heidi moved closer, lowering her voice. However, Sharon messed up with you. She became avaricious. Too much all at once. Created a paper trail. After taking out my phone, I began photographing the bank statements. Help me. Heidi, help me take her down. She paused. I can't publicly disagree with her. But she dug inside her purse and brought out a little key. This opens Mom's old filing cabinet at the lake house. Sharon is unaware that I possess it. As I took the key, something fluttered from between the bank statements. A handwritten note in my mother's familiar script. If you're reading this, my lovely Malia, something's gone wrong. The official is not to be trusted. Will. Marcus at Coastal Credit Union has the genuine one. Sharon can't possibly know. Mom. Love. I had trembling hands. Were you aware of this? Heidi shook her head, although that doesn't surprise me. For years, Sharon has also been rewriting family history. The heavy footsteps on the stairs were followed by a quick slamming of the attic door. Quick! Heidi grabbed the papers and shoved them inside her purse while whispering, Be natural. With his pricey suit looking out of place among the dusty boxes, Fletcher emerged at the top of the stairs. Women. Sharon sent me to check on you, Heidi said smoothly. Just helping Malia sort through some old memories. Correct, cousin? I made an effort to grin. Correct. This is nothing significant. Fletcher's eyes squinted a bit. You might be upset about the family fund situation, Sharon said. Perhaps we might address this in my office. No need, I answered, getting to my feet. Now I completely get it. After all, family comes first. He nodded slowly. That's right. I'm relieved that you're handling this sensibly. As we followed him downstairs, Heidi squeezed my hand. 3 rapid heartbeats. Our toddler was signaling. Come out and meet me later. Around the corner, Nick was waiting in his vehicle. I slipped into the passenger seat and showed him the pictures of the bank statements on my phone. It's larger than we anticipated, he said, going through the photographs. These transfers are professional and classy. Are you able to track them down? It will require time. But he gave me a serious look. Malia, this is about more than simply your funds, if I'm not mistaken. This may be a serious financial scam. I reflected on Heidi's warning about the years of manipulation I was only now starting to comprehend, and on my mother's message. Excellent. Because I'm done playing nice, I said. Coastal Credit Union is the first stop. The moment has come to discover my mother's true will. Nick got the vehicle going. Sharon won't be aware of what happened. As I watched my childhood home go in the rearview mirror, I said no. She refuses. Heidi slipped into the booth across from me as the coffee shop hummed with morning activity. She had a pallid face. The warpath is Sharon. She is aware that yesterday you visited Coastal Credit Union. Give her space to fume. I thrust a latte in her direction. The bank manager confirmed Mom's safety deposit box was emptied 3 days after her death. Can you guess who submitted the access request? Hazel and Sharon. Heidi encircled the steaming cup with her hands and spoke. Every time anything dodgy occurs, they are together. Bingo. Here's the intriguing bit, though. They quarreled in the lobby, which is why the manager remembers them. Hazel was apparently unhappy over something. Nick came over and slid his laptop in beside me. In relation to Hazel, you should watch this. A sequence of bank transfers appeared on the screen as he turned it toward us. Within hours, after each significant withdrawal from your account, money was deposited into Hazel's offshore account. Heidi bent over. But that's not all. Do you recall Sharon's former husband, Thomas? He stayed with her instead of going to his secretary, as everyone believes. He threatened to expose her after discovering something in her papers. He lost everything when his company was audited a week later. Jesus, I muttered. For what duration has this been occurring? Years. Since before your mother passed away, Sharon has been playing puppet master. She is using the family fund as a front to get the bell above the coffee shop entrance to chime. Hazel entered. Her white jacket was tightly gripped by her fancy purse. There was silence at our table. She froze for a second when she saw us. Something like remorse passed across her face. Then she turned and raced out. Go with her. Nick, who was already on his feet, remarked. I'll follow her vehicle. Hazel and I met up in the parking lot. We must speak. She accelerated. There is nothing I can say to you. Really? Not even the safety deposit box that belonged to my mother. She halted so suddenly that I nearly bumped into her. You have no idea what you're up against. Then tell me about it. Hazel peered around the empty parking lot. Not in this place. Come see me at the lakeside old boathouse. 3. Come by yourself. She got into her Mercedes and drove off before I could reply. Heidi caught up and remarked, Well, that was dramatic. Really, you're not traveling alone, are you? Obviously not. Nick will be close by. I looked at my phone. Fletcher had just sent a text message. Recent events must be discussed. My workspace. 2 p.m. He is attempting to drive us away. Looking over my shoulder, Heidi said, Sharon must be starting to feel anxious. Excellent. Let's give her a serious cause for concern. I forwarded Nick's banking evidence to my email, then dialed Fletcher's number. I told him I would be there, but I'm bringing proof of fraud. You have an option, whether you wish to contribute to the issue or find a solution. The queue was silent. Then there is a back entrance to my office. Make use of that. 2 hours later, I sat across from Fletcher in his wood-paneled office. Copies of the bank transfers were slid across his desk. He went over them again, his face growing paler. Here it is. He cleared his throat. This is a severe matter. I'm not joking. Want to tell me why you've been helping cover it up? He unfastened his tie. Your aunt can be very persuasive. I could lose my job because of the information she has. Blackmail? Added to the list. I leaned forward. Fletcher, help me take her down, or accompany her down. He gazed for a long time at the papers. Her personal safe contains a USB drive. Records of everything, yet I don't have access. Heidi does. I said, when Sharon is away, she is trusted to water the plants. Fletcher looked at his timepiece. Sharon has a charity board meeting at 4. The safe is behind the artwork in her study. I got to my feet. It appears like I will be late for my appointment with Hazel. Hazel? He jerked his head up. Don't trust her, Malia. She's not what she seems. What are you saying? Fletcher, meanwhile, was already shuffling papers and avoiding my gaze. Just use caution. Malia, too. These documents were never seen by me, and this was a conversation we never had outside. Nick was in his car, waiting. How did it go? Plans have changed. Before 4 o'clock, we must get to Sharon's house. I showed him Fletcher's SMS with the safe combination, ready to perform some minor breaking and entering. Entering a building to reveal theft and fraud. He smiled. I'm on board. On our way to Sharon's house. My phone rang with a text from an unknown number. Your mom also attempted to stop her. Nick, don't make her errors. Silently, I said, I believe we must learn the truth about my mother's fate. He tightened his hold on the steering wheel. One item at a time. First, let's check what's in that safe. I nodded, seeing Sharon's home grow larger in the windshield. Today would alter everything in one way or another. The code for security. Beach green, when Heidi led us into Sharon's residence. My heart raced between my ribs as we creeped near the study. Act quickly, Heidi muttered. Sharon occasionally ends her meetings early. Nick stood watch at the entrance as I lifted the picture, a pompous oil landscape showing the wall safe behind it. As I entered the combination that Fletcher had given me, my fingers shook. The safe opened with a click. I understand. I inhaled while encircling a USB disk with my closed fingers. Numerous folders. And what is this? A little read-aloud journal. The leather is supple from age and use. My mother's initials were imprinted on the cover. Gentlemen. Nick's anxious voice pierced through the quiet. A car is approaching the driveway. It's Hazel's Mercedes. Peeking through the curtains, Heidi hissed. Everything was crammed into my luggage. Fire escape immediately. The front door opens, and we clamber down the metal stairs, hunching over a hedge. We saw Hazel enter the home right away. Her ear was pressed to the phone. True, Sharon. I'm present. No. The safe appears to be undamaged. I will definitely check. What is the USB still? She raised her voice abruptly. What are you saying? Fletcher gave a call. Nick pulled on my arm. It's time to leave. His car was parked around the corner, and we hurried to it. I watched Hazel storm out of the home, furiously dialing her phone as we moved away. It was too near. From the back seat, Heidi spoke. What did you discover? I took the USB drive out. Let's investigate. Nick took us to his apartment, where he could safely access the drive's contents while he worked. The pages of my mother's diary were filled with her recognizable handwriting when I opened it. God damn, Nick replied abruptly while gazing at the screen of his laptop. These records are not limited to banks. Contracts, emails, and information about offshore accounts are all present. Sharon's been embezzling from multiple family trusts for years. I pointed to an entry in a diary and said, "Look at this." Mom wrote that she questioned Sharon about missing monies 3 days before she died. At the next family gathering, she was going to reveal everything. Heidi's cheeks turned pale. Due to her injury, she was unable to attend the conference. There was a thick quiet in the room. Nick cleared his throat. "There's more. These records demonstrate that Hazel and Sharon have been operating a complex fraud enterprise. Additionally, they have been putting up a front by exploiting the family trust. We all jumped when there was a harsh knock on the door. "Officers, get out!" In an instant, Nick threw the USB disk to me. "Back door! Proceed!" "I'll tackle this." Nick opened the front door just as Heidi and I snuck out. I caught a glimpse of Fletcher standing behind 2 officers through the window. We stopped to gather our breath after running 3 blocks. It buzzed on my phone. According to a text message from Nick, Fletcher reported stolen documents. In an hour, police will convene at their regular location. We need to talk to Hazel. Heidi spoke those words. The weak point is her. Back there, did you witness her panic? Already on it. I held up my phone to her. I had sent Hazel a message. "Make sure the USB is aware of everything. We'll meet at the lake home or these docks in half an hour. Make it public." It was a prompt reaction. Arriving by themselves. Avoid making any foolish decisions. When we got there, the lake home was empty. While I waited on the terrace, Heidi moved upstairs so she could see the approach well. In my pocket, the USB drive felt weighty. Hazel's Mercedes came precisely on time. She exited gently. She lifted her hands to indicate her solitude. "Sharon, where are you?" I yelled. "Not coming." Hazel ascended the deck steps. "She is unaware of my presence. Talk now." She fell into a chair, appearing suddenly worn out and aged. "My dearest buddy was your mother," when she realized what Sharon was doing. I helped her gather proof, but when Sharon learnt, she took a deep breath. "Sharon threatened to kill my daughter the night before your mother passed away. If I hadn't assisted in hiding things." "Why now?" "Due to this." She reached into her blazer and took out a folded piece of paper. "The final letter your mother wrote to me. Go through it." As I unfurled the paper, my hands trembled. The date indicated the day before Mom passed away. "If I die, Hazel." The evidence lies under the ancient wine rack in the summer cabin's basement. Protect Melissa. Only she has the strength to complete this. I turned to face Hazel. For years, the cabin has remained locked. Then she took a key out of her handbag. No more. Before I could answer, Heidi's admonition echoed. Automobiles are approaching. There were several headlights on the approach road. 3 cars are rapidly approaching. "Shannon," Hazel murmured. I guess she followed me. I took hold of her arm. Will she be defeated by the contents of the cabin? She gave a nod. Everything. The initial will. Evidence of her wrongdoing. Everything. Then let's move forward. We hurried over to her vehicle. A message from Nick appeared on my phone. Escape the police. For tomorrow, Sharon has arranged an urgent family meeting. Do whatever you're planned quickly. I had all the pieces this time, and the game was nearing its conclusion. The cellar of the summer cottage had a moldy, hidden scent. The beam from Hazel's torch pierced the night and illuminated rows of dusty wine shelves. She indicated the 3rd rack from the left there. I felt it as my fingers moved over the wooden frame. A narrow opening behind the rack with a strong pull. A tiny alcove was revealed as the entire section swung out like a door. Clever mom, I muttered, reaching inside. A metal lock box was waiting just where she'd stashed it years ago. From her key ring, Hazel gave me a little key, her hands shaking. She responded that Sharon was most likely already at the lake home. We don't have much time. A click opened the lockbox and I discovered a USB drive marked Evidence and a thick manila envelope inside. Above us, the sound of footsteps creaked on the floor. We stopped. "Malia?" the voice of Nick called down. "Heidi and I are there." I felt a surge of relief down here. They ran down the stairs, Heidi clutching her phone. "Sharon has lost her mind. She has phoned each member of the family to inform them that you are lying about her and that you have gone insane." The time was ideal. "Then," I said, taking the envelope's contents out, "since we recently discovered. Hold on. Something wasn't right. The documents were also incorrect. New to Chris and the USB drive." Hazel's flashlight beam suddenly steadied. "I'm terribly sorry, Malia." The basement door slammed shut above us. The lock turned a key. I said in a whisper, "You set us up." Heidi ran up the stairs, rattling the doorknob. "It's locked." Hazel's voice broke as she continued. "Sharon has my daughter." I had no other option. Heavy footsteps went over the level above. Sharon's voice carried through the door. "Did you really think it would be that simple, Malia? That your mother would just leave evidence laying around for years? Where's the genuine evidence?" I turned to Hazel and demanded. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Most of it was destroyed by Sharon. Sharon called down, "What's left is in her private vault at First National, along with your mother's real will. Something none of you will ever see, unfortunately. The cops will be there shortly. Malia." The accusation of breaking and entering is quite serious. Nick took his phone out. No signal. Signal. Jammers. Quietly, Hazel explained. "Sharon considers every possibility." Taking the torch from Hazel's hand, I swung it in the direction of the little window close to the ceiling. "Give me a boost, Nick." "Don't bother," Sharon said. "They've blocked those windows. Here's what will happen now. The cops will find you all trespassing with stolen documents in your possession. Quite a controversy. Unless. Except for what? Sign over your rights to the family trust. Walk away. I'll inform the cops." It was all a misunderstanding. I chuckled, the sound harsh in the dark cellar. "Do you really believe that I'm now concerned about the money?" "This is about what you did to Mom." The quiet overhead was overwhelming. "Take caution, Malia," Sharon eventually said. "There is a family history of accidents." Heidi gasped. Nick grabbed my arm. Hazel appeared astounded as well. "Have you recently admitted to killing my mum?" "Obviously not." Sharon's voice turned silky. "I'm simply pointing out that tragedy can strike anyone, even young, healthy people, even tonight while she talked. I'd been examining the bars on the window. They were ancient, rusty, and the frame." "Nick," I whispered, "those documents you copied from the USB drive, did you send them anywhere?" He nodded. "Encrypted email to my work account." "Why?" I pulled out my mother's diary, because Sharon made the same mistake with me that she made with Mom. She underestimated how much evidence we'd already gathered. Raising my voice, I called up to Sharon. "Hey, Aunt Sharon, remember Mom's old diary? The one from your safe? I just sent photos of every page to the family email list, including the entries about your threats before her death." "You're bluffing. Check your phone." Footsteps rushed away from the door. A moment later, Sharon's scream of rage echoed through the house. "Now, Nick," I hissed. He ran his shoulder into the window frame. Once, twice on the third hit, the entire frame broke free from the rotting wood. I turned to Hazel. "Coming." She shook her head. "I'll keep her distracted. Save your mother's name. Malia, please." We climbed out just as police sirens wailed in the distance, running through the woods. I could still hear Sharon's fury echoing from the cabin. "Where now?" Heidi panted as we ran First National Bank. I said, "The night manager owes Nick a favor, and Sharon's private vault won't stay private for long." My phone buzzed, messages flooding in from family members responding to Mom's diary pages, each one more shocked and angry than the last. "The family meeting tomorrow just got a lot more interesting," Nick said. I smiled grimly. Sharon wanted to talk about family secrets. Fine. Let's talk about all of them. "You can't access this vault without proper authorization," the night manager said, glancing nervously between Nick and me. "Marcus." Nick leaned forward. "Remember when I helped clear your brother's fraud charges? Time to return the favor." The manager wiped his brow. "Sharon will sue the bank. Sharon will be too busy dealing with the FBI," I said, sliding Mom's diary across his desk. Read the entry from March 15th. His eyes widened as he read this. "This is about money laundering and worse." I met his gaze. "My mother died 3 days after writing that." Marcus stood abruptly. "Follow me." The bank's vault area felt colder than the rest of the building. Marcus's key card beeped 3 times before the heavy door swung open. "Vault 247, he said, leading us down a narrow corridor. "You have 15 minutes before the security system resets inside Sharon's vault. We found stacks of documents, USB drives, and a sealed envelope marked original. Will Margaret Stanley got it." I breathed, hands shaking as I opened the envelope. Nick was photographing everything else with his phone. "Malia, look at this. Offshore account numbers, transaction records. Sharon's been stealing from more than just your family." A text lit up my phone. "Where are you?" Sharon's called the police again. "Heidi, we need to hurry," I said, stuffing the wheel into my jacket. Suddenly, the vault door began to close. "No, no, no." Nick jammed his foot in the gap, but it kept moving. "Marcus, override it." The manager's voice crackled through the intercom. "I'm sorry. Sharon's here with security. She knows about the access." "Marcus, don't." The door sealed with a heavy thunk, trapping us inside. "Well," Nick said into the darkness, "this is less than ideal." I pulled out my phone, using its light to examine the documents we'd found. "At least we have what we came for. Mom's real will. Proof of Sharon's crimes. Which won't matter if we suffocate in here." The intercom crackled again. This time, Sharon's voice filled the vault. "Found something interesting, dear niece. You killed her, didn't you? I said Mom was going to expose you, so you had her killed. Such an active imagination, but since you're so interested in the truth, let me tell you what really happened to your mother." Nick was examining the vault door's hinges with my phone's light. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. "Keep her talking." "Your mother was weak," Sharon continued. "She thought everyone deserved an equal share of the family wealth. She wanted to dissolve the trust, give everyone their portion. Can you imagine all that carefully managed money scattered to the winds? So you stopped her?" I tried to reason with her, offered her a partnership, but she was determined to ruin everything. I'd built the brake lines in her car. That was regrettable but necessary. Nick froze. I felt the blood drained from my face. "Did you just confess to murder over a recorded bank security system?" Silence. Then chaos erupted outside the vault. Multiple voices shouted. Something heavy fell the door's mechanism. Word to life, and it swung open to reveal Heidi standing with Marcus and 2 FBI agents. Her phone was held up. Recording. I called in that favor. "You mentioned," she said to Nick. "The FBI was very interested in Sharon's financial activities. Sharon was face down on the floor, hands being cuffed behind her back." "You stupid girl," she spat at me. You have no idea what you've done." "Actually," one of the agents said, "thanks to your confession and the evidence Miss Stanley just recovered, we know exactly what's been done." "Sharon Mills, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and the murder of Margaret Stanley." As they led Sharon away, I clutched Mom's will to my chest. "Is it really over?" "Almost. Nick said we still have the family meeting tomorrow." Heidi smiled grimly. The whole family heard Sharon's confession. I was broadcasting it live to the family group chat. My phone buzzed with a message from Hazel. "Sharon's daughter helped me escape. I'll testify about everything. Tell your mother's story." The next few hours passed in a blur of FBI interviews and document processing. By dawn, we'd given our statements, and Sharon was being held without bail. Back at my apartment, Nick, Heidi, and I sat around my kitchen table, empty coffee cups scattered between us. "The family meeting starts in 4 hours, Heidi said. "What's the plan?" I opened Mom's will, reading it carefully. We tell them everything about Sharon's schemes, about Mom's murder, about how the trust was supposed to be distributed years ago. They'll be shocked, Nick warned. Angry. Some might not believe it. They'll believe this. I held up the will. Mom left clear instructions. Equal shares for everyone. Just like Sharon feared. It's time to make things right. Heidi reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your mom would be proud." I looked at the rising sun through my window. "One more thing to do first. Nick, can you drive me somewhere?" "Where?" "To the cemetery. I need to tell Mom." We finally got justice. The truth. It cost my mother her life. But now, finally, it would set our family free. The family meeting room crackled with tension. Every chair around the massive oak table was filled. Faces I hadn't seen in years now turned toward me expectantly. Georgia sat directly across fingers, nervously tapping her water glass. Fletcher lurked in the corner, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Before we begin," I said, standing at the head of the table where Sharon usually sat, "I want to thank everyone for coming on such short notice. Is it true?" Georgia burst out about Sharon. "The arrest?" I nodded. "But there's more. Much more." I placed Mom's diary on the table. "Let's start with what really happened to my mother." The room fell silent as I read the final entries. Mom's suspicions about Sharon, the threats, the discovery of missing funds. With each word, the tension grew thicker. "That's impossible," Uncle Robert interrupted. "Sharon said Margaret's death was an accident." "Sharon lied about a lot of things," Heidi said, standing beside me. She played the recorded confession from the bank vault on the room's speakers. Gasps filled the room. Georgia started crying. Uncle Robert's face turned purple. "The FBI has confirmed everything," Nick added, distributing copies of the financial records. "Sharon's been stealing from all of you for years. The family fund was a front for her personal accounts. What about our trusts? And Patricia demanded our inheritances." I pulled out Mom's original will. Everything was supposed to be distributed equally after Mom died. Sharon hid this will and created a fake one to maintain control. Fletcher stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I can confirm this. I helped Sharon create the fraudulent. Will you?" "What?" Uncle Robert stood so fast his chair toppled backward. "Sit down, Robert," I said firmly. "Fletcher's already confessed to the FBI in exchange for leniency, but he's not the only one who helped Sharon." The door opened, and Hazel walked in. Several people started shouting at once. "Please!" Hazel raised her hands. "Let me explain everything for the next 30 minutes. Hazel detailed Sharon's years of manipulation and fraud, the hidden accounts, the threatened families, the carefully constructed web of lies that had kept everyone in line. "Why come forward now?" Georgia asked, wiping her eyes. Because of Marla. Hazel said she did what her mother couldn't. She gathered enough evidence to bring Sharon down safely. I opened my laptop, projecting account statements onto the wall. These are your real inheritance amounts before Sharon's theft. The FBI has frozen all her assets with her confession. And these records, everything can be restored to its rightful owners. The room erupted in overlapping conversations. Questions about amounts, accusations about who knew what, demands for immediate action. Enough. I slammed my hand on the table. This isn't just about money. My mother died trying to protect this family from Sharon's greed. She wanted everyone to have their fair share, to be free from manipulation and threats. Silence fell again. I've prepared documents to dissolve the family trust, Nick said, passing out folders. Once signed, everyone will receive their full inheritance as originally intended. What about Sharon's share? Aunt Patricia asked. Forfeited, I replied. The FBI is seizing her assets as proceeds of crime, but her daughter Amy will receive her mother's original inheritance portion as Mom intended. Georgia stood up, tears in her eyes. I'd like to say something. She turned to face me. Marla, I had no idea Sharon was using my name to steal your savings. I'm so sorry. I know, I said softly. She used all of us against each other. That ends today. One by one, family members came forward to sign the dissolution documents with each signature. I could feel Mom's presence growing stronger in the room. There's one more thing, I said, as the last paper was signed. Mom left letters for each of you hidden with her will. Sharon never found them. I distributed the sealed envelopes, watching as people opened them with trembling hands. Soon the room was filled with sniffles and quiet sobs as they read Mom's final words. What happens now? Heidi asked as the meeting wound down. Sharon's preliminary hearing is next week, Nick answered. With the evidence and confessions we have, she'll never see freedom again. Family members began filtering out, some hugging me, others still too shocked to speak. Georgia lingered. I'd like to help, she said. With the court case, with anything. I want to make things right. I hugged her. Mom would like that. Later, as Nick drove me home, I finally felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. I can buy my house now, I realized, laughing suddenly. After all this, that's what you're thinking about. Mom always said home is where you build your future. I smiled, watching the sunset paint the sky. It's time I built mine. My phone buzzed a text from the realtor. The Craftsman house is still available, ready to move forward. Yes, I typed back. I'm ready for everything. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as Sharon was let out in handcuffs. She caught my eye as she passed her designer outfit, replaced by prison orange, her perfect makeup gone. For a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. In her expression, defeat. Life sentence, Nick said, squeezing my hand. No possibility of parole. Heidi hugged me from the other side. It's really over. Not quite, I said, watching Sharon disappear into the prison transport van. There's one more thing to do. The drive to my new house felt different this time. The Craftsman's wraparound porch welcomed us with late afternoon sunshine, and Georgia was already waiting on the steps with a box in her hands. Found these? In Sharon's storage unit, she said as we approached old family photos. I thought you might want them for the house. Inside, the empty rooms echoed with possibility. Nick and Heidi started unpacking boxes while Georgia and I sorted through the photos on the floor. Look at this one, she said, holding up a faded picture. Your mom and Sharon as teenagers. They actually looked happy together before money poisoned everything I said. Taking the photo, young Sharon smiled at the camera, arm around my mother's shoulders, both so innocent unaware of what lay ahead. The doorbell rang. Hazel stood on the porch with her daughter, Amy. "We brought a housewarming gift," Amy said, holding out a small pot of herbs. "Mom said Aunt Margaret used to grow these in her kitchen." "Basil?" Hazel smiled. She always said a home needs something living to grow with it. I invited them in, watching as Amy gravitated toward Georgia in the photos. Soon, they were sharing stories, laughing over old memories, creating new connections. Sharon had tried so hard to prevent. Fletcher arrived next, carrying a thick folder, the last of the paperwork. Everyone's inheritances have been properly distributed, and he pulled out a set of keys. "These belong to you. Your mother's lake house. The real estate agent can list it whenever you're ready. I'm not selling it," I said, taking the keys. "Mom loved that place. We'll use it for family gatherings. Real ones this time." The afternoon flowed into evening. More family members dropped by with food, furniture, and stories. Uncle Robert installed new security locks while his wife helped to arrange the kitchen. Cousin Thomas set up the Wi-Fi network. The house slowly came alive with voices and laughter. Nick found me on the porch, taking a break from the chaos inside. "You okay?" he asked, handing me a glass of wine. "Better than okay." I looked through the window at my family, my real family, working together to build something new. Just thinking about Mom. She wanted this, you know. Not just the fair distribution of money, but this family supporting each other instead of tearing each other apart. "She'd be proud of you." "Of us," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone." Heidi poked her head out. "Hey, we found something interesting in one of Sharon's boxes. You need to see this." Inside, everyone had gathered around the dining table where Hazel was holding a manila envelope. "These are letters Sharon wrote but never sent." She explained one for each family member, including you, Malia. She wrote them the night before her arrest. I opened mine slowly, recognizing Sharon's precise handwriting. Malia. "By the time you read this, I'll have lost everything. You're stronger than your mother was, smarter. You beat me at my own game. And part of me is proud of that. I convinced myself I was protecting the family fortune. But you protected the family itself. That's what Margaret would have wanted. I'm sorry I lost sight of that, Sharon." "Well," Georgia said, into the silence. "That's as close to a real apology as we'll ever get from her." "It's enough," I said, folding the letter. "We can't change the past, but we can build something better." Nick raised his wine glass to new beginnings. "To family," I corrected, looking around at the faces of people who had gone from strangers to supporters. The real kind. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my new porch swing, listening to the neighborhood settle into darkness. The house keys felt right in my hand, like they'd been waiting for me all along. My phone lit up with a message from Georgia. "Thank you for bringing us back together. Dinner at my place next week." I smiled, typing back. "Wouldn't miss it." Inside, the basil plant sat on my windowsill, its leaves reaching toward the moonlight. Mom was right. A home needs something living to grow with it. And now, finally, both the house and our family had room to grow. The porch swing creaked gently as I rocked at peace with the quiet. Sharon had tried to build an empire of secrets and fear. Instead, she'd given me the chance to build something much stronger: truth, trust, and a real home for the family Mom had always believed in.